All right, so we're diving into the 2024 workplace and focusing on IT.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're looking at Mike Bersoni's yearly report that he puts out.
From the Forge of Unicorns.
Right, exactly. From his newsletter, The Forge of Unicorns.
Yeah.
You guys also sent us a ton of really great supporting material, too.
Yeah. We've got some good stuff from the Pragmatic Engineer.
Yes.
Their data on software engineering jobs.
Uh-huh.
The Gallup State of the Global Workplace report.
Mm-hmm.
Infinite Potentials report on burnout.
Yep. So we're going to kind of weave all those together and see what we can learn.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that Mike, he's been researching this for 14 years.
Right.
And he brings a perspective he calls behavioral engineering.
Interesting.
So, yeah, we'll be weaving together kind of his unique insights with these broader trends and research findings.
So I feel like 2024 has been a roller coaster for a lot of people in IT.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah. Mike really hits this point home, actually.
Yeah.
Highlighting how 2024 was the first year the IT sector actually faced.
Oh, wow.
Significant inflation.
Really?
Which has all sorts of ripple effects, right?
Totally. And the data from the Pragmatic Engineer really backs that up.
Yeah.
2023 saw the first shrinkage in software engineering jobs since Y2K.
It was crazy.
And while there's been like a slight uptick in 2024, it's nowhere near the levels that we saw before that.
No.
So what do you think's going on?
So the Pragmatic Engineer points to a few key factors.
Okay.
Obviously, the end of the zero interest rate period definitely shook things up.
Yeah.
And we also saw a slowdown in venture capital investment. And plus, you know, without a major kind of tech disruption like we had with mobile or the cloud revolution in the 2010s, growth just hasn't been the same.
Yeah, it's like the industry was on this crazy sugar high.
Totally.
And now it's dealing with the crash.
Yeah.
But amidst all this change, some companies are still hiring like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Definitely. Amazon's on a hiring spree.
No surprise there.
No surprise with their return to office policy and the resulting kind of turnover. But other big tech companies are playing it much cooler.
Okay.
Not a lot of growth there.
Interesting.
There are a couple of interesting surprises, though.
Okay. Like what?
Oracle is scooping up a ton of senior folks.
Really?
Yeah, though a little birdie told me their titles might be a bit inflated.
The classic title inflation.
Compared to other companies.
Gotta love it. So is anyone else bucking the trend?
NVIDIA is booming, obviously.
Yeah.
Riding the AI wave.
Which makes me think about all the buzz around, like all those new hot AI companies.
Yeah.
Like, where are they finding their talent?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The Pragmatic Engineer dove into that. Looking at places like OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, Mistral, seems like they're all poaching heavily from Google, except xAI, which unsurprisingly is pulling a lot from Tesla.
Given Elon Musk's involvement?
Exactly.
Makes total sense.
Makes sense.
But where are all the folks leaving big tech landing?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Intel and Qualcomm are attracting a lot of those folks.
Okay.
High engineering standards at both those places.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, though, not many people are leaving Meta.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe they have some secret sauce for retention.
Maybe.
Or maybe their skills just aren't as in demand right now.
Could be either one.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a second.
Right.
We've talked about the job market. But what about the people in these jobs?
Right.
How are they feeling about all this uncertainty?
Yeah, with all this upheaval, you have to wonder how it's affecting people's well-being.
Absolutely.
And the reports from Gallup and Infinite Potential don't paint a very rosy picture. Burnout is still a huge problem.
It is.
Even with companies trying to address it.
Yeah, it's pretty disheartening, isn't it?
It is.
Gallup's data shows global employee engagement stalled out in 2024.
Oh, wow.
At a measly 23%.
That's crazy.
That's practically a quarter of the workforce.
Yeah.
And it feeds right into Mike's argument that the usual approaches just aren't cutting it.
Nope.
He even brings up Rossi's iron law of evaluation to explain why.
Okay, so what is Rossi's iron law?
So in a nutshell, Rossi's iron law states that we often overestimate the positive impact of interventions. Think of those like feel-good workplace wellness programs.
Yeah.
They sound great on paper, but the reality is often much less effective.
Oh, so companies are spending all this money to try to fix things.
Right.
but they're not actually getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Mike argues that this is a big reason why engagement is so low. He's calling for a more fundamental shift in how we think about work.
Okay.
Moving away from these surface-level fixes and towards a more holistic approach.
So it sounds like he's putting a lot of emphasis on the human side of things.
He is. And this is something that both he and Gallup really emphasize.
Yeah.
The crucial role of managers.
Okay.
They see good managers as absolutely essential for engagement and for combating burnout.
Right. And Gallup's data backs that up too.
It does.
Like having a supportive manager can make a world of difference for employees.
Huge difference.
But here's the catch.
Yeah.
And Gallup highlights this too.
Yeah.
Managers themselves are often having more negative experiences than their teams.
It's true.
It's like they're caught in the middle of everything.
Absolutely. They're dealing with pressure from above and disengagement from below.
Yeah.
It's a tough spot to be in.
So this all feeds into Mike's call for a different approach, right?
Yes.
He's advocating for a shift from transformation to evolution.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to hear what that means, like in practical terms.
It's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
Instead of these massive top-down transformation, he's talking about a more gradual human-centered approach. He calls it socio-technical evolution.
Okay.
And he uses some pretty dramatic real-world examples to illustrate his point.
Oh, you know me, I love a good story.
I know you do.
So what kind of examples are we talking about?
So he dives into some high-profile IT failures.
Okay.
Boeing, CrowdStrike, Volkswagen.
Oh.
The kind of failures that have massive consequences.
Yeah.
He argues that these weren't just technical glitches. They were actually rooted in deeper organizational and cultural issues.
Wow.
Things like poor communication, lack of accountability, disregard for human factors.
So he's saying that even if you have the most advanced technology, it won't matter if your people and your processes.
If your people aren't aligned.
Yeah, not aligned.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's where the part of socio-technical evolution comes in.
Right.
He's emphasizing that technology needs to evolve alongside our culture, our communication, and how we work together.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Mike doesn't just point out the problems, right?
No.
He actually offers solutions.
He does. They come in the form of two frameworks he's developed.
Okay.
The Unicorns Ecosystem and the SW Craftsmanship Dojo.
Those sound intense.
They do.
What exactly are these frameworks?
Yeah.
And how are they supposed to help?
Well, that's a journey.
Okay.
We'll embark on in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so stay tuned.
We'll unpack these frameworks, explore their core principles, and see how they translate into tangible strategies for building a better workplace.
I love it.
Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right, so let's unpack these frameworks that Mike's kind of cooked up. The Unicorns Ecosystem and the SW Craftsmanship Dojo.
Okay.
They might sound a bit out there, but bear with me.
Okay.
They're actually pretty grounded in practical application.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Okay.
What exactly are these frameworks,
right,
and how do they actually work in the real world?
So think of the Unicorns Ecosystem as kind of like a high-level strategy for digital evolution.
Okay.
And it's a direct challenge to those big bang transformations that companies love so much.
Yeah, because those usually end up being more fizzle than bang.
Exactly.
Right.
And Mike's argument, and it's backed up by all that Gallup data on burnout and low engagement, is that sustainable change needs to happen gradually.
Okay.
It's about evolution, not revolution.
So instead of trying to overhaul everything overnight,
it's
about building a workplace that can adapt and thrive over time.
You got it.
Okay.
Now, within this ecosystem, the SW Craftsmanship Dojo is a more focused framework. And it's all about blending technical excellence with what Mike calls social engineering.
Okay, hold on. Social engineering, that sounds a little sinister.
Yeah.
What does that even mean in this context?
Don't worry, it's not about like manipulating people.
Okay.
It's about intentionally shaping
the
culture, the communication, the behaviors within a team or an organization.
Got it.
And remember how both Mike and Gallup highlighted the importance of managers?
Yeah, they both seem to agree that managers are like a critical piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
When it comes to engagement and burnout.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the Dojo framework is designed to help managers develop the skills they need to become effective coaches and mentors.
So is this about like leadership training programs?
Yeah.
Team building exercises?
Kind of. Trust falls.
It's deeper than that.
Okay.
Think of it less like a one-off training session and more like, a martial arts dojo. Okay, now that's an analogy I can get behind.
So there you go.
So it's about like continuous practice and improvement.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mike believes that developing a strong culture of software craftsmanship requires ongoing effort and commitment from everyone involved. Okay. It's not a quick fix. Yeah. It's a lifestyle change.
This all sounds great for the people side of things.
Yeah.
But what about the technical aspects? How does the dojo help with that?
So that's where Mike's partnership with Alcor Academy comes in.
Okay.
They've integrated Alcor's technical expertise, so stuff like legacy code refactoring, solid software design principles, right into the dojo framework.
So it's this holistic approach that blends like the human and the technical sides of software development.
It's not just about writing code.
Yeah.
It's about building a culture of excellence.
Nailed it.
And that's why Mike calls it socio-technical evolution. He believes that you can't separate the two. They need to evolve together.
Okay, so we've got the unicorns ecosystem as like the big picture strategy and the SW craftsmanship dojo as like the more focused framework for developing a culture of craftsmanship.
Exactly.
But how does all this theory actually translate into the real world?
So remember those IT failures we talked about earlier? Boeing, CrowdStrike, Volkswagen.
Yeah, those were some pretty high-profile disasters.
They were.
Yeah.
And Mike uses those cases to show what can happen when you don't take a socio-technical approach.
So he's suggesting that if those companies had adopted something like the dojo framework, they might have avoided those failures.
He believes so.
Wow.
He argues that a stronger culture of craftsmanship with a focus on open communication, collaboration, continuous learning could have helped those companies identify and address the underlying issues before they blew up to major problems.
That's a pretty compelling argument.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's one thing to talk about these frameworks.
Right.
And another to actually implement them.
Sure.
Like, how does Mike help organizations put this stuff into practice?
So he's got a whole toolkit, workshops, online courses, even coaching programs.
So he's not just throwing ideas out there.
Right.
He's actually giving people the support they need to make these changes happen.
And he's been putting himself out there, too.
Okay.
Speaking at conferences like the IT Revolution Enterprise Leadership Summit Europe, XP 2024, I-80 24.
So he's walking the walk.
He is. Yeah. And it seems to be resonating.
Cool.
The Pragmatic Engineer even featured him on their list of top speakers for European tech events.
So he's building a real reputation.
Yeah.
As a thought leader in this space.
He is, and I think it's because he's offering something that a lot of people are craving, which is a way to move beyond those Band-Aid solutions and really address the root causes of burnout, disengagement, and even those massive IT failures.
It's about creating a workplace that's not just efficient, but also human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, why aren't more companies embracing this kind of approach if it's so effective? Why are so many organizations still resistant to change?
That's a great question. And it's something that we can explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
We'll look at the challenges and obstacles that organizations face when trying to implement these types of changes.
Okay.
And we'll consider what it all means for you, our listener. Okay, so we spent a lot of time unpacking these big ideas from Mike Bersoni.
Yeah.
The shift from transformation to evolution.
Right.
The importance of socio-technical evolution and these really interesting frameworks that he's developed. It's a lot to digest.
It is, but I think it's incredibly relevant
to
what's happening in the workplace right now. You know, remember that Gallup data we talked about?
Yeah.
Global engagement is stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
And Mike's research, which spans over a decade, suggests a fundamental disconnect between how we're working and what people actually need to thrive.
And it's not just Gallup.
Right.
Infinite Potential's report on burnout paints a pretty bleak picture, too.
It does.
They're saying that chronic workplace stress is basically the norm now.
Ugh. It's really concerning when you think about how much of our lives we dedicate to work.
Right.
It begs the question, if we're constantly burned out and disengaged, how can we possibly be creative, innovative, or truly engaged in our work?
It's a powerful point. It really underscores Mike's argument.
It does.
This isn't about making small tweaks. It's about a much deeper, more fundamental shift in how we approach work itself.
Right.
So what do you think is at the heart of this shift?
I think one of the key elements is moving away from
this purely transactional view of work.
Okay.
Where it's all about inputs and outputs, tasks and deadlines. We need to move toward a more relational model.
Okay, I'm following you, but can you unpack that a little more?
Sure.
Like, what does a more relational model of work actually look like in practice?
So it's about recognizing that work at its core is a human endeavor.
Okay.
It's about relationships, collaboration, open communication, and a shared sense of purpose.
So it's not just about checking things off a to-do list.
Right.
It's about how we interact, how we communicate, how we support each other.
Exactly.
In the process.
And I think this ties back beautifully to Mike's focus on craftsmanship.
Because true craftsmanship goes beyond just having the technical skills, right?
Totally.
It's about taking pride in your work.
Yeah.
Caring about the quality of what you produce.
Right.
Feeling a sense of ownership and responsibility.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And it's about working in an environment where those values are shared and nurtured.
Okay, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
That kind of environment doesn't just magically appear.
No, it doesn't. It takes a conscious effort to create and cultivate it.
So how do organizations make this happen?
Right.
It sounds great in theory.
It does.
But how do you actually shift from those traditional hierarchical structures to something that's more collaborative, more empowering, and ultimately more human-centered?
So that's where I think Mike's work offers some really valuable guidance.
Okay.
His frameworks like the Unicorns ecosystem and the SW Craftsmanship Dojo provide a roadmap for organizations that want to make this shift.
So it's not just about these high-level concepts.
Right.
He's actually giving people tangible tools and strategies that they can implement.
Yeah, and what's even more compelling is that he's showing how this approach can lead to real tangible results.
Like what?
Not just in terms of employee well-being, but also in terms of business success.
So it's a win-win.
It is.
Happier employees and a more successful business.
Right.
Seems like a no-brainer, really.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing this resonate with more and more people.
Yeah.
There's a growing movement toward more human-centered and purpose-driven work.
It's almost like we've gone through this pendulum swing.
Yeah.
For so long, the focus was solely on efficiency, productivity, the bottom line. And now there's this realization that we need to bring the human element back into the equation.
I completely agree. And I think the shift is absolutely essential.
Okay.
If we want to create a future of work that's not just sustainable, but also fulfilling and meaningful.
A future of work that's fulfilling and meaningful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's something worth striving for.
It is.
But I think it's important to acknowledge that there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
All right, changing these deeply ingrained
it's hard.
Patterns of behavior is never easy.
You're right. There will always be resistance to change.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen overnight.
But as Mike has demonstrated, change is definitely possible.
It is.
It starts with awareness, with the courage to challenge the status quo, and with a genuine commitment to building a better future for ourselves and for the generations that follow.
Well said, and I think that leads us perfectly to a final thought for you, our listener.
Okay, hit me.
As we move into this future, this world that's constantly changing and evolving, what role will you play in shaping a future of work that's not just productive, but also purposeful, human-centered, and ultimately more humane?
That's a great question for everyone to think about.
It is.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, and please remember to subscribe to The Forge of Unicorns to stay up to date with our latest episodes.